This landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO classified. UFO classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Well, happy Fantopia Friday, my friends. I am always very excited to be here and to spend a Friday evening with my friends from all over the world. Every time I get into chat and see the usual crew, my peeps, Joe, Libertas, Northern UFOs, Tim, Amy, it really makes me feel happy to know that I've got such a great family out there, even though I've never personally met any of you. Just to know that you're there and you're supporting me and my work, and we can get in here and chat and have a really productive, important dialogue, that makes me very, very happy. And I want to give a really profound thanks to Northern UFOs, who has been helping me more than I can even say. It has just been incredible. He has been uploading all of my past radio shows to my YouTube channel, and Tim's been listening. That's great. So please get the information out there. Share the YouTube shows and tell your friends and yada yada, all of that good stuff, because I think, I really try to interview people who are relevant, who have important things to say. And let me tell you, it's hard to weed through some of the nonsense in the field, as you all know. I made a very interesting post on Facebook that I just want to mention. And I deliberately posted this because I wanted to see the reaction that it would elicit. And boy, did we get some people going. I put on my Facebook post, frankly, I'm disgusted by the negative behavior with regard to DeLong and his project. Joe Rogan's podcast was pitiful at best, which, if you can listen to that, the podcast after he was interviewing DeLong, where he completely berated him, it was really insulting and pathetic. And then I also put, why do people in our community underestimate what his group is trying to do? We should try to focus on our own research and stop using Facebook as a tool to berate others in the field. In the end, it only makes us look like fools. And I absolutely believe that. I will say that a million times over. You can say what you want about Tom DeLonge and To the Stars Academy. People in the field, I understand, they're cynical and they just think this is another version of Doty and Moore and all of these things. But this is different. And hopefully you can put your cynicism aside, step back, look at the big picture. When the New York Times article came out, the first thing I did was call every media outlet in Utah and said, here is my name. This is the work I do. If you want to interview me so I can give you really good information about what's taking place in Utah, here you go. And so perhaps instead of spending our time pounding our chests and acting like complete idiots and berating other people and really being unprofessional, in my opinion, we should take the opportunity and be grateful that this is putting a new light on our work. I have had many people come to me and say, people that have been researching for decades, and they said, wow, finally we got serious media attention, and they're grateful. So I want to put this out there that we should take this as an opportunity to get our information out there, to present ourselves in a professional manner, and to reach out to people and know that we have a group at work that is trying to do what they're going to do, and we can work on that. So that's what I wanted to say, but we did get lots of responses. So if you're a Facebook friend of mine, definitely get in there and read that. We also had some older researchers who were pretty nasty to a friend of mine who has been on the show. And again, I think that this only makes us look bad. and we need to elevate ourselves, be professional, and do the best we can to work with what we've got. My guest tonight is Rob Mercer, and he is a UFO investigator. And let me tell you, this man came across the mother lode. I can't even imagine what I would have done if I would have answered that Craigslist post and found all of the Blue Book material that he did. It is incredible. He is an investigator for the Black Vault, and we both work together with John Greenwald, who's put together this new organization. He's former section state director of Ohio MUFON and is a longtime follower of the subject of UFOs. He learned to keep an eye open for stories and collections, which is good advice. During a UFO search, he found all of this stuff from a man selling a box of Project Blue Book files. He bought them. This man had bought it at an auction, tracked down the original owner and a former officer assigned to the program, and was given more papers. He currently resides in Springfield, Ohio, conveniently near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So, Rob, welcome to the show, and I'm really excited to be working with you on the Black Vault.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I've been watching you and your posts and some of your work that you've been doing with John Greenwald's group, and I have to say I enjoy reading what you've done because you're very thorough, and I like your approach to all of this.
Okay, well, I picked all that up from when I was with MUFON. The guys here in Ohio did a pretty good job of training me, and no matter what anybody says about MUFON, the guys at the state level work their butts off, and
you have a good crew in Ohio.
Yeah, it's a small crew, though. I mean, as far as what MUFON has. Now, I don't know if the Black Vault's only got a couple so far, but hopefully it'll start picking up.
Well, and it's interesting. In fact, I'm hoping that I get to come out and speak at Ohio MUFON. And we've been kind of talking about that, and that would be so much fun. And then I could meet you, and maybe see the mother load of files that you have. But that would be really neat. There's so much going on in Ohio, especially being near Wright-Pat and everything. I have to ask you and just give our listeners kind of a background. How did you first get into this subject?
Well, since I was a kid, I was into the subject. Read everything I could find, and I was born in '70, so as I got it, there wasn't much on TV, up until, last 20 years. So back then it was hard to find information. But once I, became an adult, I really started following more, going my own way on it. I had a relative that was interested in it, had a sighting himself when I was young. He, got me interested into that. Then I'm a plumber, and I worked over in the Dayton area, which I don't live far from there, but I spent about 15 years working over there, working in, doing service work, going in people's houses. And that's where I would learn that how many people are into UFOs, collect items, collect books, have little stories here and there. And I would see a lot, people, when somebody passed away, they throw things out. Their family would. They wouldn't keep it. I was in a couple houses where collections got ruined, and they were throwing them out. And I tried to gather what I could, but that's when I started taking it serious. As far as doing all that. Now, in 2013, I was listening to an episode of Coast to Coast when they had a MUFON representative on there looking for investigators, and that's when I joined up early 2013 with them. And kind of been busy ever since.
And that is really cool. I mean, it's being in MUFON, being the state director. I mean, it taught me a lot of things. And I also I was kind of thrown out here with really no support. And so I had to learn a lot of things by calling people up and making connections and trying to establish a network, because the chapter was non-existent here. But there are people in MUFON that will be my dear friends for the rest of my life. I mean, Ruben Uriarte, Ben Moss, all of these people that I can call or just bounce things off of. And it really, in that regard, there are a lot of good people involved in the organization.
There is, and that's the key to the subject. I mean, everybody first of all, everybody has to quit arguing about everything and try to get on the same page. And you do meet a lot of interesting people. My first day over at the first meeting I attended, I met an older gentleman that had been in the field since the 50s. And he taught me a lot. What to look for. Of course, when I was young, everything I saw was a UFO. Once you get in there and start taking it serious and looking at the books and spending time actually digging into things, you get a little more level-headed. But it's a fun hobby. As my daughter got a little bit older, became a teenager, and we quit hanging out as much. That's when I kind of dug in and started spending a lot of time in my office working on those things. But I enjoy it. It keeps me off the streets.
Well, not me. I've been, oh my gosh, this past week I've spent probably 15 hours in meetings with different people about this. And it is, I can't stop. It's like you just become so, obsessed with this, and you want to know more. And then one door opens, and it's like you just get all of this information, and it's really, it changes your life. And I think there are obviously some drawbacks to what takes place, but the things that I've learned about astronomy, about science, about, all of these things, about personal relationships or group mentalities. I've learned so much about things I never would have expected, and that has been a really cool thing for me.
The same as for me, and you, like I say, you do meet a lot of interesting people. Things they'll tell you things you never knew existed. So I very much enjoy it.
I know, I love it, and I have to ask you. So you've had one sighting in your life, is that correct?
I had myself. I had hundreds before I knew what I was looking at. But a few years ago, I had a sighting of a large triangle right here in my own backyard. We have a drive-in screen in our backyard, an 8x14 movie screen. And my wife and my daughter and myself were out there watching a movie, and it was July 5th. I'm thinking it was 2015. And I'm always watching the sky. I'm pretty sure it was something I'd seen before anyway. But I was looking towards the southeast coming over my property. And I'm kind of out in the country. We've got tall pine trees surrounding. But I saw a very bright light coming. It looked like somebody was walking on top of the trees with an LED flashlight. It was real bright. And I'm watching it. I've taken the key is I've got my eye off of the drive-in screen that's bright and ruins your eyesight. And I'm watching that direction. And as I pointed out to my wife, and, she said it was an airplane without even looking at it. And my daughter, I don't even know if she looked away from her phone long enough to see it. But as I continued to watch it, the light shut off. And I'm sitting there staring, puzzled, because it's an odd direction for plane traffic. And let's say they did have their landing lights on and they just shut them off. I'm at least going to see the rest of the lights as it gets into my property, or see it turn, something like that. So I'm watching it, looking for those. And I don't see anything there for about 10, 15 seconds. And then right above me, I can make out light reflecting off of the front end of it. It was a very wide triangle, along the same shape as a B-2 bomber. But it extended. You couldn't see the ends of it either direction. And what it was my drive-in screen was lighting the front end of it up. It was only about 200 feet above. And the thing was transparent, except you could see the light reflecting off of the front of it from one end to the other, all the way across. No more than 200 feet up. And I usually have one of those, which I recommend anybody, if you're out stargazing, I have one of those laser pointers. So it's a good one, but I didn't have it on me at the time. It was inside, so I had to run in. I gambled and ran inside to get it, to try to bounce it off the bottom of that and get a better idea what I was looking at. And when I came out, I couldn't find it. But when the thing was on top of us, there's a highway near me in my backyard. You can hear the sounds are different. You sound like you had a blanket on top of you. Just the feeling, everything felt weird, muffled, and usually something you get with heavy cloud cover. So the thing was there. And of course, I'm supposed to know what I'm doing at looking at things like that. But in the heat of excitement, you kind of drop the ball, which is what I did. But most likely it was something out of Wright-Patterson. Doesn't make sense that they would have been cruising around with that bright light on, especially on July 5th. There's all kinds of people out shooting things up in the air and acting a little strange, but it is what it was.
So, I go back and forth on whether the military is testing, 200 feet above us, and I have friends who have worked within the military, and it is an aviation. It's a threat to the population, and it's a threat. I mean, it poses threats to aviation safety, all of these things, if you're testing over the general population. And so I hear from some people that they would never in a million years be testing top secret things over the population. So what is your take on that?
We had an investigator that joined up here in Ohio when I was with MUFON, and he never actually did a case, but he worked with the Air Force back in the 80s. He was in the black budget projects. And I called him, and he was already going by then, but I'd called and was telling him about that sighting. And he said that no matter what you think, he said they test stuff over public areas. He said they're not. At night, they'll do all kinds of things. He said don't even think that they wouldn't. He said they'll be right above you and you not even know it. So, I mean, he was a pretty level-headed guy. That's what he told me. So it tends to make sense. I've had a lot of people see things like that around here, things that the triangle's on top of them. You're looking up, you don't see it, but you look out of the corner of your eye and you can see it. Things like in the daylight. So, I mean, I think they do testing, especially where else is, anything that needs to be tested at Wright-Patterson, where else are they going to do it? You're going to come around in the vicinity here.
Well, for me, because I live in Utah, and we've got tens of thousands of acres that are dedicated to the Utah Test and Training Range. We've got Hill Air Force Base, we've got Dugway Proving Ground, and the NSA, and so we've got lots of places that they could be testing top secret things, which they obviously are. So for me, why would they test them? Why would they take the chance to test them over a population?
And that is true out there. Yeah. I mean, given those circumstances, you are correct. But here, there's nowhere around here. Yeah, there's just nowhere around here. It's so heavily populated.
And that, and that's why, I mean, one day I think something, I think that, of course, they would be testing. I mean, we know, given some of the files that John Greenwald has specifically with regard to Dugway, I mean, we know that they test all sorts of things on the general public. So, it's one of those things. I don't know. Sometimes I just don't know where to go. But I wonder, do we sometimes think that things are military, it's involved with the military, and they possibly could be anomalous? What do you think about that?
I do believe that. I do. Now, that particular triangle I saw, I mean, the only reason I'm saying military is just the way they had lights on it, period. It would be having a light aimed at, I mean, this light was aimed downward. That's just kind of why, I guess extraterrestrials with their technology can fly around without a light. As far as looking down at things, that's just been my thoughts on it. But I'm sure they have anomalous ways.
And again, this is so, it just blows your mind because, when I was over in Hessdalen, Norway, and talking with Erling Strand, and when I've talked to other people, especially up in the Skinwalker Ranch area, I mean, there are reports of objects or just beams of light that come straight down, and they are not related to any type of known craft. And so could these objects be mimicking our military, the technology that we have, airplanes? Could that be a possibility? I mean, I just think it's so hard to say because we can't think of how could we put our own personal belief systems on how something that is maybe not from here, maybe from here, but another energy entity could be, processing things. I don't know. It's a tough thing.
And that totally makes sense. I mean, I'm sure that's the case anyway. I mean, what better way if you don't want to be seen than mimic something like that?
And yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's so hard because you want to say, and I know in MUFON, there's a very specific way, if when you're investigating things, and Steve Hudgens would always say this to me, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And we would get in heated discussions about this because I would say, I don't necessarily think that is the case. And when I was looking over reports for Project Orange, which was with Robert Spearing, who's incredible in MUFON still to this day, we were analyzing cases of the orange amber spheres. And a lot of the field investigators all over the country were dismissing cases, even though these objects were moving into the wind and behaving like something that would not be man-made. People were dismissing cases and saying they were Chinese lanterns.
Yeah, there was a bunch of those around. And I believe that, too. Matter of fact, I remember Terry Ray gave a presentation on that I was at one time. And he had a lot of evidence, of different places that would explain against that. And a lot of people were seeing them. A lot of people still see them. They don't seem to be as much recently, but yeah, there are a lot of them out there.
I know it's so, again, that's an area that I really love to study. It's so fascinating, the anomalous light phenomena. And that's cool that you got to hear Terry Ray. Terry's a friend of mine, and we kind of collaborated back in the day when I was in MUFON, and it was really interesting just to see the way, because everybody, unfortunately, when you're investigating, especially when you're not a scientist, we come into this with our own belief systems. And so when we look at a case, we either want it to be unidentified because we think everything's, something that it's not mundane, or we poo-poo everything because we have to prove ourselves right. I don't know. It's really, there's so much that goes into this. And that's one of the things I love about it. You just never know where you're going to go.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
And we've got like 2 minutes until we take a break, but Ohio is a really cool place, and you guys have some different activity in specific areas, and I want to touch on that when we get back, and also your really cool Blue Book files.
Okay.
Where can people find out more about you?
Right now I've got a website. It's called the Miami Valley UFO Society. It's what they call this general area we're from here in Ohio. And I try to keep current events on there, recent sightings, which for some reason I don't receive a lot. I've had it for several years now, but just haven't got the word of mouth out there enough to receive anything. But I share a lot of things on there, little videos I've put together, a couple from different sightings that people have reported to me in the past.
Oh, that's so cool. And
we'll contact me through there or through the Black Vault, which John's putting all my files on there, so.
Yes, he is. And we'll talk more about that again when we get back. I'm Erica Lukes here with Rob Mercer. Stick around, get into chat, ask questions, call the phone. Come in and chat with us. We will be right back.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
With Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
Paranormal radio never sounded so good. Join the hosts of the American Ghost Hunter Show each week as they shoot from the hip without holding back.
They're kind of unpredictable, not like the rest of us.
Live every Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Come hear some of the hottest authors, investigators, as well as TV and radio personalities from around the world on the American Ghost Hunter Show.
Our survival depends upon it.
Hauntings, UFOs, cryptos. If it's branded paranormal, we'll be talking about it. The American Ghost Hunter Show. Live Thursday nights, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The only question you have to ask yourself, are you ready for it?
Yeah! All right!
Ready.
The all-new KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Great.
Make a note of it.
It's great.
The Fenton Files, where it's all connected.
You see, whoever controls technology controls the world.
Come explore a universe full of possibilities. Every Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. The Fenton Files. Go where no other show has gone before.
You can deny all the things I've seen, all the things I've discovered, but not for much longer. Because too many others know what's happening out there.
Whether it be UFOs, aliens, conspiracies, or even consciousness, your host, Lorian Fenton, has a file for that. The Fenton Files. Your journey to the truth is but a file away. Live, Monday nights, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The Fenton Files.
Incredibly intense.
Where truth is just waiting to be discovered.
In the shadows, a voice cries out. Evidence that you're not alone.
You said my name. What is your name?
Proof that the living and the dead coexist. Or do they? Every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, join writer, producer, and paranormal investigator Greg Bakken on Ghost Box Radio as he explores, interviews, and investigates evidence alongside some of the best in the paranormal community and beyond.
6 people killed.
Ghost Box Radio, Wednesday nights exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network, because the dead don't sleep. Ghost Box Radio.
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back, my friends. I want to thank all of my listeners from all over the world for sending me messages, for sharing information about the show. And there's never a day that goes by when I don't receive a message from somebody either on UFOclassified.com or on my Facebook reaching out and just saying, this is what happened to me. This is a profound experience. And I cannot believe the information that I get and how incredible it is for people to be trusting with really profound, important experiences in their life. And of course, you know, we have no way to validate this, and I don't really even care because these people have had profound experiences. That's the way it rolls. But it is, for me, this is the most important thing I will ever do in my life. I am sure that Rob, my guest this evening, would feel the same way, Tina as well, and all of you listening. This is an issue that is so critical that we have to be aware of what's going on in the field. And I think right at this point in time that we need to be very, very aware of Tom DeLonge, of To the Stars Academy, of all of these things that are going on, because we are seeing a disclosure process happening. It might not be the way you want it to be, the way I want it to be, and it will never be the government coming out and saying, this is real, we've kept it from you for 50 years, ha ha ha. But what we need to do is be proactive, and we need to come together as a group and decide how we want to interact with this. And I think there's some pretty critical issues going on that we need to address. And thank you for listening to my little speech there, but I'm very passionate about this. My guest this evening is Rob Mercer, who is an investigator from Ohio. He has been doing this for a very long time, and he came across a Craigslist ad of this person selling Project Blue Book files, the original files. he has those. He's collected more archives from researchers. He's now a part of the Black Vault investigation team with me, which is John Greenwald's new thing that he announced first on this show, which is very cool. So, Rob, welcome back. We were talking about your sighting, about how you got into this. And when we left off, I was mentioning Ohio and really the kind of the cool stuff you've got going on there. So what's taking place there now with regard to sightings?
Well, with winter and all, it usually gets pretty slow right now. And I don't know if I haven't been sent any from his, from the Black Vault, but even when I was with MUFON, January and February, a lot of times wouldn't see a sighting during those months. But then as soon as the weather breaks, it picks up to probably, 60 sightings a month. Now I've been myself, I just joined up with John, late last year. I had, was considering going back to MUFON, and then I came across, his post on Facebook looking for people. That's I was kind of wanting some action because I wasn't getting much on my own. So that's why I went that way. So I'm not on the current sightings around here. I'm not too sure right now, what MUFON's getting. I don't really have the access to them anymore. But we've had a few from around here. I mean, a couple of them are older ones that people are just now telling us about, which is usually the case in the winter. You might have saw the one on there a couple weeks ago where the lady it was actually from November of 2016, where a lady had taken the video of the lights moving across the sky. Mm-hmm. I had a guy not far from me a couple years ago that had one of my favorite sightings that I've actually investigated with MUFON, and I remain friends with him and go out there and sit with him a lot, trying to, hoping it'll come back, talking about it. But he was, I'm going to go ahead and tell you about his sighting if you don't mind.
Please, I would love that. That's awesome.
Okay. He lives out in a very rural area, not much around. He was letting his dog out to go to the restroom about 11 one night, like he does every night. And in the distance, as he was standing outside watching, he was looking north. Down the road, he saw two bright searchlights. What he would just like you would see at a grand opening of a store. They were both, to him, looked like they were aimed up. Well, they were definitely aimed up because they were, joined at the ground but heading in different directions going up. One of them was stationary. He saw the other one slightly moving around. Of course, that's all farmland, hills and farmland. The nearest big town's probably hundreds of miles that direction. No stores or anything. You got, just little small places. So he was curious as to who would have something like that, and he decided to go check it out. And he got in his car and was driving down the road towards it. It was a state route. 11 o'clock at night, there wasn't any traffic on it. But as he got about a mile down the road, the lights just turned off. So he was, that's what it was. He was just going to go down and turn around. He was kind of, maybe he'd see whoever had those, putting them away or loading them on a truck, or, in his opinion, there had to be some kind of truck that they would even be on the back of. They were so big. Well, as he went a little bit farther down the road, he went up over the hill. He saw red and white lights in the middle of the road. And he assumed he was coming up on a accident scene. So he slowed down, rolled his window down, expected them to tell him there wasn't any place to turn around, expected him to tell him which way to go and what to do. And as he came up on it, the thing lifted up off the ground. He was about probably 50 feet away from it. And it was taking up the road from one side to the other. And it was kind of in an area amongst a bunch of trees. It lifted up about 40 feet in the air and kind of slightly tilted forward and just silently went on over the trees in front of him. And the road had several sharp turns in it right after that. So he watched it lift up and go and stood at it in disbelief, and then hit his accelerator and decided he was going to see where it was going. Went down, made the dog legs in the road, and got back on a straightaway. And the thing was right above him after that. Just kind of almost following the same path as the road that he was driving under. And he's looking up at it, trying to see it. And he followed it probably a quarter mile down the road, and it made a sharp turn to the right and just accelerated quick and left sight. Went headed, I guess it would be south. Disappeared from sight to him. So he was, kind of curious about what the heck that was. Went home that night, couldn't sleep, thinking about it. Got up the next day. This, not that this had anything to do with it, but his cable box wasn't working the next day, his receiver. So he had to take it back and exchange it. And when he was doing that, he goes to get in his car, and his clock has been changed. That's once again may have not had anything to do with that particular sighting, but it had been. It's odd that the time was off on it. He never noticed it the night before when he was out looking at that. He drove down to the scene a couple times that day, didn't see anything. Well, he had never heard of MUFON at the time. He spent I think it was 10 days researching, trying to figure out what that could have been. He actually, the very next day, he called the local police department down there, it's a little village called Mechanicsburg, and they told him that, he asked if there were any accidents in the scene or if they knew of anything, and they told him no, call the sheriff's department. He called them, they told him to call Wright-Patterson. So he called Wright-Patterson, and they told him he saw a helicopter from an accident scene. There's no other explanation for it. More or less told him to quit bugging him. So he called Dayton International Airport and never got an answer back from them at all. Nobody ever returned his call. So he spent 10 days. He never even thought of them before. Spent 10 days before he finally on the internet came across MUFON, figured it out. I was assigned the case and went out and visited with him. And we went to the house, went over his story, and then we got in my truck and drove down to the scene. As we're pulling up, he said, right here is where it was sitting on the ground. So we got out and looking around, and the grass down at the bottom of the hill there where it was sitting was all pushed down. A little bit off the side of the road, like a half circle, about 20 feet in diameter, which is there's grass that same height everywhere. But this circle was pushed over. So we brought in a guy with a Geiger counter. A friend of mine had one at the time. Didn't pick up any readings, gathered the grass and soil samples and sent it off. And as far as I know, nothing ever came back, on it positive. That's what I was told.
So you'd send it to MUFON?
Yeah. I sent it to our Ohio chief, and he sent it up. I'm not sure where they sent it at the time, but it came back. A few months later, he told me that nothing was in it. But that was just, you almost had to hear the guys from his point of view. I was with him down there when he saw that, the different things that the guy's not lying. And that's why I like this field. You meet people like that. You can get a judge on who knows what, if they're crazy or not, which sometimes you might run into that. I hate to be mean to anybody, but guy had sheer honesty. It was just driving him crazy what he saw. There's no way a helicopter could have sat down in those trees for starters, and there's no way that he would have heard it. It was one of my favorite sightings, though. When I still hang out with him, hasn't seen anything since. But we put ads in the newspaper trying to find other witnesses to it. Never came across any. But it's a very rural area with a lot of old farms, so a lot of people aren't up that late. But that was one of the good ones that I liked.
Wow. And, that reminds me to hear you say that. That reminds me a lot of what takes place in the Uinta Basin where Skinwalker Ranch is. The same type of thing, the same type of, in-your-face sighting and then denial by the powers that be. And it's really fascinating. And I think the more I have people on the radio show who live in areas like this and have talked with people, there is a theme here, and it's very curious.
Well, I want to add one more thing to that I forgot to mention. When I always have my witness sketch me what they saw on any case. I just like to see, draw it how you saw it, and a lot of them don't like to draw, but it's easy to draw a dot or whatever it is. So he drew this thing, and it was tall. It was obviously looked circular shaped, but it had flat edges on it. But he said it was so bright that it hurt your eyes to look at it. You couldn't hardly tell what shape it was. So I asked him. I said, if you had to give it a shape, what shape? And he said a hexagon. In the MUFON's database, that's not even, I don't even think that's an option. It wasn't an option at the time, when you come down to the different shapes of different objects. Well, one of the things you do as an investigator, you go to Newfork and see what they have, the National UFO Reporting Center, see if there's any correlating cases in there.
Absolutely.
And that very day, early in the morning, 19 miles away, as a crow flies, a guy reported a hexagon-shaped craft over his car on a highway he was driving down. He said it was on top of his car, then it turned. He kind of turned off and it went another way. The only difference in his size and everything was the same, except he said it was blue lights. But the fact that two different places, and there's no way eyewitness would have known about that. He's not that good on a computer. He would have never got on there and found that hexagon-shaped craft. But there was two of them that same shape in the same 24-hour period in the same area is interesting to me. Now, we went to his neighbors, the witnesses' neighbors, and we're talking to them, a couple of them. One of them up the road had been having a kind of a party that evening, a graduation party. It was in June. And they were in by 11, but he asked them anyway. We walked over there and he asked, did you see anything strange that night? And the guy, without even knowing what he was there, he talked about seeing two black helicopters. He said they weren't Air Force because he used to be in the Air Force, but he said they had their beams aimed downward and were flying away low right at dusk. So, it would have been about 9:30. So were they up there looking for something? Had that craft been in the area all day? Found a place to sit down, because there's plenty of places to sit down in woods and different bodies of water and all kinds of things. Like I said, it's mostly hills and farmland. It was a very interesting case. I think there was more to it.
And you know what I love, though, and the cool thing that you've said is that you are still in contact with him.
I do. I try to keep in touch with a lot of those guys or different witnesses, but yeah, we do keep in touch. He's got a sister who is friends with people in government, and she's told his story to them. He won't give me particular names, but guys that he claimed worked at the Pentagon, and she's told that too, and they won't give her any answers, but she's high up somewhere in a political party and was telling him. He's kind of passed the things on to her, and they tell her they've heard that stuff before. That's as much as he'll say right now, and that's just since then. It's not that he's looking for things like that. He just became obsessed with it after the event. Before it wasn't something he came up with. It just kind of consumed him after seeing it.
And that's what happens. I mean, I know after I had my series of sightings here in the Salt Lake Valley in 2013, it was just like a light went on. And from that moment on, it was like, this is my laser focus and here we go. And I want to know what it is. And I called Dugway Proving Ground. I called Hill Air Force Base. I did everything I could to try to figure out what it was. And clearly that obsession has not stopped, but it changes you when you have an experience like that.
Oh, it does. There's another guy here in Ohio whom I also met through MUFON, and he had a first sighting when he was like 6 years old back in the mid 60s. He lives over in it's Dark County, Ohio, which is very, very rural and very flat. I mean, there's no hills or anything there. It's all farmland. But he's had a lifetime full of sightings. His first event in 1966, he was a kid. Him and his sister were playing at their grandparents' house. They were playing on steps, going up. They were sliding down on pillow cushions. And his sister had gotten tired and went and sat down, and he went back up the steps for one more slide. And as the story goes, there were two grays standing at the top of the steps, two short gray beings, almost the size of kids. And he said he started to scream, and one of them tapped something on its waist, and he said he became frozen. And he said they just stared at him for a couple seconds, and he just couldn't move. Then all of a sudden they turned around and floated down the hall. And after they got out of his sight, he was able to move, and he said he took 2 steps up, to the top and look down just to see him float out a window. Now, he continued to have sightings like that his whole life, up until he became an adult. I spent a lot of time over with him because I've talked to a lot of his friends that he grew up with who had similar events happen to them, this whole little area over there. So it's the whole group of them a lot of them's wives don't like them talking about it, but they've I enjoy going over having sky watches with people like that, keeping an eye out.
And I want to ask you, we're getting ready to go to break, but I want to ask you, how do you doing this, how does that affect your family? I mean, what do they think about all of this?
Sometimes I spend too much time on it. I mean, obviously, whose wife wouldn't get a little mad sometimes? But I've learned to balance it. I don't take it, every single day. I don't come down and work on things. When I was with MUFON, I think I did 20 or 40 cases. I can't remember the exact number. But I would put about 8 hours anywhere from 8 to 15 hours in each case. And, it'd be time consuming on your, when you work 70 hours a week, didn't leave a lot of time for family. So I've had to learn how to balance that. By stepping away from MUFON, that helped. But then I got I've get no cases, kind of having to rehash old ones just to have something to do. So I'm hoping with John here in the Black Vault, we'll start getting some and get something to work on.
But you know what I think the cool thing is, though, now that we've made our connection, we can bounce things off of each other. And, for me, I know for James Clarkson, who left MUFON as well, and he'd been there for a long, long time, but that was his thought, if I leave MUFON, what am I going to do for cases? And the dust has kind of settled for both of us. And I know that I'm busier than I've ever been, because it's like I'm following leads and going down different directions. And so that's been absolutely fascinating. And I cannot believe what I've learned. Oh. So we'll have to spend some time and talk to each other, and then talk about sightings in your areas and sightings in my areas and compare notes, because I bet there's some interesting places that we both could go.
Oh yeah, and the way everybody's sharing everything on there. I mean, once we start getting a lot more content, that's good for referencing cases and everything, and researching them. You can, with the technology, they reach right out to you. Hardly not even have to make a phone call, just ask a question, and it's making it a lot easier. But there are a lot of obstacles out there. Like I said, with all the drones and everything, it's not an easy job. I mean, sometimes you're not going to get definite answers. It could be a neighbor playing with something. You just don't know.
And that's true. I think, we don't see a lot of drones in this area, and drones are so noisy. And of course they have lights on them. I mean, they have to have specific lighting patterns on them and all sorts of things. And so, you can kind of weed through that, but it's, you have places in Ohio where, like here we do in Utah and every other state, where there are specific sighting. I mean, there are patterns in these sightings, historical patterns, and you go back 20 years, 50 years, and you're getting the same types of sightings reports, or different, you look at newspaper archives and things, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, we are. I mean, to me, it seems to be a lot of triangles. Just seems, I guess, what a lot of times, yes, I know a plane with their 3 lights can look like a triangle, but we get a lot of triangle sightings that definitely aren't airplanes. There's got to be a pattern to them. You set out and draw it out. So I'm hoping to be able to figure some things out here, start getting the word out, and start getting some good sightings.
Well, and that is that's one nice thing about my radio show is people reach out to me with different cases and sightings reports, and I love that. And I know that the Black Vault will be a great resource, especially if all of us work together to kind of bounce things off each other. That'll be really important. But with Ohio, you've got a couple areas that I want to specifically ask you about when we get back from break, and we still haven't talked about Tremonton and all of the cool Blue Book cases. When you sent me the photos of the roll of film from the Delbert Newhouse sighting, I about fell over in my chair. That, to me, Tremont and the Blue Book case is one of the most important Blue Book cases of all time.
It is, and I'm glad that film was in there. It even the case. I mean, there was probably 6 films, I think, total that I've got with this collection, and that case is obviously from 1952. I mean, the thing's been down in there for a long time. The film wasn't in the greatest shape. I don't know if you've seen it yet. It's got that black line down the middle.
Yeah, yeah.
But what interested me about that case is, I mean, everybody knows what you know about it, but when he talked about it, some of the film was missing. I was very excited to find me a projector because I had to buy projectors. Of course, each film was a different style, 8mm, 16mm. So I had to go out and thrift stores and everything and look for all the different projectors just so I could transfer them and actually watch them to see what I had. And I was anxious to get that one on the screen just to see if it had any unseen footage. And ultimately it didn't, UFO-wise. There's some footage on there of somebody sewing at the very end that may have been the footage he was talking about that was cut off. Because I seen one time on one of Kevin Randall's pages that it was some kind of vacation video or film that was missing, a clip. So, it's, who knows? I know one time the Air Force said they didn't even have a copy of that. Then they, this copy, and they obviously have another one that's in the National Archives. So it's there's some interesting things like that.
Wow. And I want to talk to you more about that because, like I said, I mean, obviously this is a case in my home state and one of the most important Blue Book cases, and a case that I'm not sure if everybody out there listening knows about. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get back from break. I am Erica Lukes here on UFO Classified. It is Friday evening, so stick around for a great night of a really strong and incredible women on KCOR. I'm here with Rob Mercer. Stick around because the best is yet to come. I will be right back.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back and happy Friday, my friends. I hope you have had a wonderful week, and I hope it was as productive as mine. I love my job. I love doing this. This is so fun, and it's a little disturbing at times. The things I've learned this week have set me back a bit, but it keeps me going, and I can't wait for the day when I can share all of the information with you, what I'm learning specifically about Utah, specifically about the Uinta Basin and things going on here. It's remarkable. I am hoping in the next couple of weeks I have somebody on my show that will absolutely blow your mind. That's a little teaser I'm going to give you. I can't tell you who, but cross your fingers for me because this is going to be an incredible show. I want to thank my guest, Rob Mercer, tonight, who is a colleague and a fellow investigator at the Black Vault Investigations. If you do have a sighting, please go to John Greenwald's site, the Black Vault Investigations, file the report there, tell your friends. This is the new place to file sightings reports, and all of the reports will be public. And this is an incredibly important thing for all of us. So if you file a report, you won't have to worry about it getting tucked away. You will have access to that. And Rob is in Ohio. He came across a very big find through a Craigslist ad, and he found some really important Project Blue Book files. I have pictures on my Facebook, and I will be sharing those on UFOclassified.com. When we left off, we were talking a little bit about a case that, in my opinion, and maybe I'm just saying this because I'm from Utah, but one of the most important cases in Blue Book history, which is the Tremont and the Delbert Newhouse case. And this was 7/2/1952. So great case. There is footage, and this was extensively investigated. They spent over 1,000 hours analyzing the film. It was quite a case. So tell us about what you were talking about the film and how you had to get all of these different projectors to get that out there. Is there a place that we can go look at your film?
Well, right now, John's got them all up on the Black Vault. The different films that came, some of them were sound tapes. Can I care if I start this story from the beginning?
Please do.
Okay, it'll get me off track if I don't. I mentioned earlier that I was a plumber over there in the Dayton area, and I see people getting rid of things all the time. We'd be talking about UFOs. If I seen a book in somebody's house, I knew they were open to the subject, and I would talk to them, see if they had any stories, see if they knew anybody that had any stories that worked at the base, because a lot of the people in that area do work at the base or have family that do. But it was back, in the early 2000s that I started really going to the thrift shops over there looking for items, and you'd be surprised when the stuff you'd find even there, books and things from military books, pictures that hung on walls and offices from, Wright-Patterson of aircraft, things like that. Neat little things. But I started monitoring Facebook also, and I would just get on there and do a search. I'd been doing it for a few years. I would just literally type in UFO, and it'd bring up mostly motorcycle parts. Occasionally you'd get a book or something. But after a MUFON meeting in September of 2013, I came home at night and I had UFOs on my brain. I couldn't go to sleep. So I thought, I haven't done this for a couple days. So I did the search, and that ad popped up, which I'm not sure if you shared it on your site, but it was just a Craigslist ad that said Project Blue Book files. It had belonged to let me see how that was again. They belonged to an Air Force captain who was assigned to the project. And that was like midnight that night. And, my stomach dropped when I saw that. So instantly I started checking news stories, make sure nobody had stolen anything around here. Just general searches for Project Blue Book files found and things like that. Nothing came up. So I sent the person a message. It was by this time at least midnight, and told them to please get a hold of me when they wake up. Well, the next morning I got a message back from a gentleman, and he said, "Yeah, I still have them. Nobody's called about them yet." And I said, "Well, I get off work at 3 p.m. I said, I can be at your house by 4. Will you hold them?" He said he would. So as soon as I got off work, I went down there, and he had it was like a wicker crate that had 2 black binders in it. It had a lot of pictures. I think I've got a picture of those binders that I sent you there. They're up on your site. They were full of pictures. And then he had a stack of papers. And then the Tremonton film was not in that group. That group had the Galesburg, Illinois, Moline, Illinois film in it. It was a 16 millimeter. And then it had a box of slides. And then, I was excited about that right there. As soon as I got to my truck and loaded those, he wanted $100 for them. So I wasn't going to argue about that. I gave him what he wanted. Got out of my truck, and before I pulled out of his driveway, I thought I better screenshot this ad in case somebody says I stole these. So I did that. As soon as I got home, I don't even know if I talked to my family. I came straight down in the basement and started rifling through them. And one name kept standing out in the signatures. I mean, there was things on there from the 40s, back when it was Project Sign. But one name that seemed to be on a lot of documents, and especially signed in ink, was, Lieutenant Carmen Morano. So I assumed that must have been who had him. That's where I started on my search. I, referenced his name with, the guy told me he had bought a pile of lumber at an auction in a garage. He said in an upstairs garage, he was picking up the lumber. He was the last person there. It was his job to get, everything was there. It was his. And as he took up that wood, under it was this wicker crate. So he took the box with him, and that's what these were. So I called a couple of the guys from MUFON here in Ohio, and they came over, and we went through them, and we come to the conclusion that he gave presentations on them, whoever had them. And, I've figured out that it was Morano by real estate searches and everything. I found the house. I found a 2-story garage that had an auction 2 months prior. I knew I was on the right track of the right guy who they belonged to. So after about 6 months, I finally got up the nerve to give him a call. And actually a friend of mine that's with MUFON here in Ohio, he's former Air Force, Air National Guard. He said, you ought to let me give him a call since I have a military background. He might talk to me. So, I was nervous. I didn't want to give him back, but I didn't want to have to give him back, but I didn't want to get him in trouble either. I didn't really want to share him publicly without talking to him first. So, long story short, we found out that him and his wife had divorced 5 or 6 years before, and he left, and she probably had no idea. He didn't even know those were still up there. And he was all right with me having them. After we got over the confusement of why I was calling him, he understood and said, yeah, we talked a little bit about the program, probably spent about an hour. And as we got done, he said, back where I live in the summer, he said, I have probably 4 or 5 more boxes of that stuff. He said, if you want it, you can have it. And I said, yeah, I'll take it. I said, what do you want for it? He's like, oh, you don't have to give me anything for it. He said, just, call me back in a week and remind me, and I'll get it and send it to you. And I said, well, I could drive and get it, because that was in eastern Pennsylvania. And he said, no, I'll mail it to you. So I gave him a couple weeks. I didn't want to pester him too much. And when I called him up and, had to refresh his memory about who I was. And he said, well, let me get it all gathered up and, get all the garbage out of it, and I'll send it to you. I said, I want the garbage. I want everything, that, pencils, anything you might have. He's like, well, heck, I'll send you my buttons and patches and everything. Excuse me. So he sent me everything he had. He sent me a box or 2 at a time, and I did, reimburse him shipping on it. But that's what it ended up being, just boxes of loose papers, some complete files. Not everything I don't have every Blue Book file, but there's a lot in it. I think when I stacked the pages up on my desk, it was probably about 4 feet high, just on loose papers.
Oh my gosh.
And then there were some in files, in actual brown folders. There were pictures and envelopes. There were oddball things like that. I'd find slides here and there wrapped up in tissue and shoved inside of envelopes. Books, different magazines and books. So, he told me it was just stuff out of their desk. He said when the program shut down, it was his responsibility, him and a secretary, to declassify everything and send it to Maxwell Air Force Base. And then this stuff, he said, was what was in their desks. So, we talked, and I told him I'd call him back in a couple of weeks with questions after I went through it. And as I started getting it put together, There really wasn't a pattern. Sometimes I'd have doubles of cases. The Socorro sighting itself from 1964, that thing was 200 and some pages long. And there was 2 of those in there. They were stapled together or bound together. There were other movies, sound clips, even more slides. And then I called him back and got to asking him more about him because I had questions. And he said that he had put a lot of that stuff together for the press. And they would come in and look at it. They would come in and look at things. And the particular books from different eras were already put together. But there was stuff from, some of these files from the 50s they had 3-digit, they had numbers when they didn't, at the end when it was Blue Books, they didn't give everything numbers. So these are, back in Project Grudge, they would have different numbers. Like 2-digit, 3-digit numbers on the sightings. There was a lot of interesting things in there like that. And that's, it took me a while to sort everything out, and I still don't have it exactly right. It was kind of up to me to try to find, it looks like, picture somebody cleaning out a desk, and they're just stacking paper in a box. And then later they moved them to another box. It was just like a deck was cut and stacked and moved. So it wasn't a lot, I had to do a lot of organizing on them. But there were a lot of neat things in there, including the films. Correspondences between Carl Sagan and Hector Quintanilla. Things that don't show up in actual Project Blue Book files, which he did tell me that I might find things that didn't make it to Project Blue Book. And I found several things so far, and there's probably more if I ever take the time to actually to spend a lot of time into it. But I found some neat cases that didn't make it into Blue Book.
So have you been able to scan all of that?
I had it about halfway scanned in my computer, and then since I've been sending them to John, I've had to reorganize it a little bit because it was made for my brain. I knew how everything was, but I'm trying to make it so people can understand what it is, organize it, label things a little bit. And that's a little time consuming.
Right.
But the last week or so, I've been scanning in other things that I hadn't had scanned in yet. And I find some interesting. I just found this one just last night. It's from it's a 3-page letter written from a 71-year-old guy. And when you hear his name, James T. Kirk. He wrote it in 1969 to Blue Book, and it didn't make it to it's not in the files, doesn't show up anywhere, no internet searches. I get on Fold 3's site with a lot of this stuff to see, that's kind of how I tell if it's out there or not, if it made it to the files. But this guy, and I may put this on the website, on the Black Vault as an actual case, just a historical case. This is pretty interesting. This guy in 1925, he was in Phoenix, Arizona, working on his way to work at 4 a.m. at a produce place. And as he looked up, he saw a pear-shaped blue flame in the sky. He said it was anywhere between 20 and 200 feet wide. But it stayed there for at least 10 minutes. Never heard any sounds. It eventually started fading. But he could never figure out. Somebody told him it was a meteorite, but he said a meteorite's just not going to hang there like that, the way he had seen it. And obviously it came in, at the end they were Blue Book, and they didn't take the time to actually make it a case. And I've run into quite a few like that in here.
Have you run into anything like that from Utah, just out of curiosity?
Not yet, but I'm not going to rule it out because I haven't been through it all. There's some of these papers are very thin, almost transparent, that whatever type of things they scanned them on, and I just have to take the time to go through them. Some of them probably go with cases, actual known cases, but things like this, what I've just discovered, this is actually a handwritten note here.
Wow.
In the ink still, so you know that they didn't make copies of it, send it like that. And John, I sent him a few the other day that he's going to be putting on there that are from a guy. These are from July of '69, 2 different cases from Pensacola Beach, Florida, where the Air Force officer at Eglin Air Force Base investigated a couple. And you'll see when John gets them online, but the way he treats the witnesses, especially, says they should be court-martialed, wasting your time. There's some very interesting documents that didn't make it to Blue Book either, but they made it, up to the office. They just never took the time to enter them in. But everything is going to be on his site eventually.
Thank you for taking the time to do that. Because, like I said, I've been friends with Barry Greenwood, and I've seen how many decades he has spent meticulously going through all of these old archives that he has, getting them available for researchers, and that is so important. And had he not done that, I would not be able to investigate the cases that I've investigated. And it's so important, and I know it's tedious, but thank you so much for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. And this stuff's ultimately going to end up at the University of New Mexico. Friend of mine, Dave Marler, you've probably met him or talked to him before. He's helped them set up a place where they're going to keep files. He's got a heck of a collection too. He's
got an amazing collection. I've seen it firsthand. And, I want to just say it's interesting because when I talk to Barry Greenwood and other people that have been archiving for decades, their thought is to not donate to universities because the public does not have the access that they need to have for these collections.
Well, this supposedly, there's a contract out there that supposedly everybody will have access to it. That's what I've been told. When the time comes, obviously make sure, but that's what he's got all his stuff set up to go there eventually also.
And I think the cool thing about you though is you're scanning this now and you're giving it to John so it will be made available. And I don't know if Dave has scanned his stuff to make it all available or if it's just going to the university.
No, but he's helped me research some of this, and
he
I
is
share
amazing.
A lot of it with him online. But yeah, he'll eventually all of it will be on there. It's just it's time consuming for him to put it on there and everything like that. But we was talking about the Tremonton UFO, the 1956 UFO movie, the black and white. I think it's called UFOs, Unidentified Flying Objects. Sitting down in my basement watching that and going through these files is just eerie. That old black and white movie, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
yes,
when they're sitting there watching that movie and investigating it on that movie, and you're sitting here looking through the paperwork, and you got the actual film canister of that film with that film in it sitting right next to you. It doesn't get any better than that as a fan of history and UFO. That's the top of the line for me. I like that. It's a good time.
And what an honor. I have been really fortunate that Keith Chesterfield has sent me some of his books, and some of his I've got amazing books from Len Stringfield. I've got old 40s and 50s newspaper archives and just all of these things that he was so kind. He just sent me these boxes of all of this. And I think my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, wow. First of all, I think, Keith Chester is like the most amazing man on the planet. He's done so much for with his research on Foo Fighters and all of this. And then for you to have the responsibility, the honor to have these files. And it's like sometimes I'll look through some of these books of researchers, out of print books, but, they're autographed and the researchers have passed away. And you just look at that and, it's such a surreal and a profound moment to know that you have a little bit of them and that you can do your own part to carry all of their work, their lifelong pursuit of the truth forward. It's an amazing, amazing feeling, I think.
Well, I like to tell people, keep an eye out for stuff like this, because to this day, I search Craigslist once a day for UFO items. It only takes a second to do, but, obviously I can't do out of state. But there's stuff out there. Keep an eye out on places like that, thrift stores in your area, because you never know when somebody passes away, their family, even though they enjoyed it all the time, their family, to them, it's just a stack of papers or a stack of books, and they'll throw them out or just get rid of them. And that's how you come into things. I've had MUFON, Ohio State director here. He has people call him all the time and just say, my dad used to investigate UFOs and study them. Do you want all of his paperwork? I mean, there's constantly things like that coming out. So,
and absolutely. I mean, I in fact last night. I mean, this is what I do on a Thursday night. I'm looking through eBay.
Yeah.
to see stuff, to just try to find anything. And I think that, as all of us need to, Dave, you, me, Barry, all of John, I mean, we need to get together and all, I think, talk and have a cohesive plan of where this information is going to collectively go so the younger generation will have access to this.
Yeah. It's important. It is important.
It is.
And me telling the story, telling what I have, doesn't do any justice. You have to see it in person. I mean, nothing that... I'm very honest about this. Everything I said happened as I say it happened. I've had people, think that, well, that's, you're making that stuff up. That's fake. And the papers are fake. And if you ever see them in person, you'll know they're not. And I try to get, good scans so you can see the marks and the staple marks and everything that's on them. Paper clips, old rusty paper clips stuck on things. I mean, this stuff's the real deal.
I need to get back to Ohio, so please put in a good word for me.
Okay. All right.
I would love that.
Yeah, they was asking my opinion at another group meeting I went to a couple weeks ago about speakers for this year. So I'll bring your name up.
It would be so much fun to get back there. I would love just to see everybody involved. And I went, I travel. And amazingly enough, I've been a pretty vocal critic of MUFON headquarters, but not MUFON. The people involved in MUFON are different chapters. But It's been fun for me to go to different chapters throughout the country and speak and see my old friends. And it's a great experience. But I'm Erica Lukes. This is our last break. I'm here with Rob Mercer. Stick around, get into chat, ask your questions. I know I've got a couple questions, Amy, I will be asking. We will be right back.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. 9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
With Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
Paranormal. Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal.
The U.S. military holds the ability to time travel.
Jeremy Scott asks the questions that we're all dying to know.
Wow, that's a remarkable question.
Watch your step. Hide under your blankets.
The show that is going to make you think.
Prepare yourself for what you're about to hear.
This transmission is coming to you.
You're riding into the paranormal.
Live Saturday night, 6 to 9 on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
30 seconds and counting.
Broadcasting to you from another planet, beaming you a world of entertainment.
This is the world-famous KCOR. Now listen live online at KCORradio.com.
I like everything about this station.
When do I listen? Like 24 hours a day.
It's my favorite station. I just love the music. It keeps me going at work.
Thursdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. The Voice of Spirit. Come join inspirational clairvoyant, medium, and psychic Leo Bonomo. As he connects you to the other side. The breathtaking 2-hour show will take you on a journey not just through the paranormal, but into the world of mediumship with world-renowned international guests exploring a world of topics relating to anything spiritual.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a poor little me.
Live Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The Voice of Spirit, hosted by Leo Bonomo.
It is amazing, is it not?
Your connection to spirit is but a show away.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific,
Jump onto the celestial highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. For Hyperspace, the one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace, hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Want to take a ride?
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back, and I hope you stick around for a killer night of amazing, strong, beautiful women here on KCOR. Tina Marie is coming up with Restricted Airspace and then Hyperspace with Solaris Blue Raven. So a great night. And I know all of you in chat will be sticking around. You guys are awesome. I want to just give another shout out and a heartfelt thanks to Northern UFOs, who is a huge supporter. And I could not, I don't even know what to say. It really brings tears to my eyes that somebody would care that much to help me take the shows, upload them to YouTube, and get the word out. It really does touch me that people care that much, and I want to thank all of you for being here. Again, I'm going to try not to have a little moment, but you are the reason that I'm here, and I really do this for all of us. And so thank you, Northern. You rock. I am here tonight with someone who is really just cool, and I hope I get back to Ohio. I hope I get to see his collection. He obviously cares very deeply and is excited about it. This is really neat. Rob Mercer is a UFO investigator, and he is investigating alongside me with John Greenwald's group, the Black Vault Investigations. He's the former state section director for the Ohio MUFON, and has been researching this for a long, long time. He's had interesting sightings and has a Blue Book archive, too, that would just, obviously my jaw is still on the floor. I cannot wait to actually physically touch and just look at the Tremont footage. This is going to be super cool. But, wow. Rob, where are you going to go? You're going to keep researching this. You're going to work with John. You and I are going to talk more and work together, and you're scanning all of the Blue Book stuff to get that out there. What else are you doing?
Well, besides work, that's it right now. As summer comes along, things will pick up, and hopefully I get a little bit more time. We're actually going to, my family's coming out to Utah this summer, Moab area for a week.
Oh, wow.
We like that area. Passed through there a few years ago for a few hours, but we want to make it a destination. So we drive out, hit all the different UFO places along the way, stop at Roswell. I love the Very Large Array. I've been there once before, and then kind of swing up to Moab and then spend a few days and drive back. So
and I have to say, Moab is some of the most spectacular scenery on the planet.
It is. We like to do road trips, and I always incorporate the famous UFO places in them. But and my family likes it. They'll go along for that. They enjoy that. But we passed through MUFON. We had spent on our last trip. We went out there in 2010. We spent the night at Rachel, Nevada, outside the Gates area. Oh, yeah. Camped out there and really enjoyed it, and stopped in Moab on the way home. And that was just a beautiful place. I mean, Utah in general, it's a nice place.
It is. It's really fascinating. And I will say that sometimes there's not a lot of separation of church and state, here.
Yeah.
But I think that, what do you say? That probably goes with every place you live, but it kind of is especially the case here. But with the diverse scenery, it is just stunning. You could be in the mountains, you can be in the desert, you can be on the periphery of Dugway, or you can be right next to Skinwalker Ranch. So you name it, you've got lots of good stuff.
Well,
but
it's a pretty place. Well, they have 5 national parks, I think.
They do for now. We'll see
Yeah.
how that works out. But
It's nice, though.
It is. That's so cool. I'm glad you're coming here. I have a couple questions in chat from Amy, and she wants to know: was there any evidence of the famed Grudge Blue Book Report 13, if that ever existed, and if not, is that perhaps in your collection?
Yeah, I looked. It's not in the collection. I have the Project Sign book, and then I have reports 1 through 12. And then I have report 14, but I could find no report 13 anywhere. That's one of the first things I went looking for, that and the estimate of the situation. Couldn't find anything on either one of them. Now, of all this stuff I have, nothing's redacted. Where if you go online and look at different case files, you can't see people's names, locations half the time. Nothing in here is redacted like that. So if there was going to be anything, I've looked enough to know that stuff's not in here.
And so when John is posting stuff on Black Vault Archives, is he redacting stuff, or is everything on there?
Me and him's kind of putting our heads together and figuring out how to go about that. We figure if the person's going to be over 100 years old, just like this one I was telling you about, this letter that the guy was 71 and 69. I know he died in 1989 or 85. I looked it up, but he was a real person. But we kind of, it's a judgment call. I've got 3 books that are what's called the complete case list. They're one of them's from 1947 to 58, then from 59 to 65, and then 66 to 69, and it lists every single case, the date, location, the person's last name, and the conclusion. And on those, you're gonna have a hard time tracking somebody down by just their last name. So we're not really too worried about redacting those. But in some instances, if the person was young and they're probably still around, we are having to redact it. Now, if somebody's doing some serious research and they want that information and they get a hold of me, I may give them the person's name. I've actually reached out to a few people from some of these cases just to ask them questions. Sometimes I get a response. Sometimes I never hear back from them. I've tracked a few down on Facebook from different things just to ask them questions, cases that might be related to something current around here that sounded similar, just to kind of get their story.
Interesting. Wow. And I can see Amy she's flabbergasted that 13 is really missing, and that is... Sounds like...
I know you think they wouldn't have skipped it like that. You'd think somewhere it has to be out there, but...
Interesting stuff. What else, when you've been looking through all of the files and trying to sort them, which I can only imagine is a nightmare, what else really stuck out to you?
Well, basically, when they would get a case, like you and me, you have your tools you use for investigating, your websites you go to. I've got one book that's a book I've put together. It's all like 5x7 index cards, and they're just basically reference notes. They don't have copy and paste back then like we have now, but where they have their answers to type in on a particular case when they're responding to somebody. It's got I've got all the books that they use for their research, whether they're books about meteors, satellites, a lot of satellite information, just pictures of people at Wright-Patterson, like secretaries or something they have found to hold up different displays, hold up a hot air balloon or one of those garment bags. A lot of neat things like that. I had the Socorro 1964 case. Of course, that's one of their biggest cases the Blue Book had. And
you had to say one of the biggest because you knew I'd have to say Tremont.
Oh, yeah,
I'm just saying.
But literally, page-wise, it is the biggest. there was a film in there that the lieutenant was actually excited for me to get. There was two things in there that when he called me, he asked if I seen them, which one of them was a letter to Hector Quintanilla from Carl Sagan, and it had a signature in ink. But I've had Martin Willis, I think you know him. I sent it to him, and he told me, I didn't figure it was, but he thinks that's probably his secretary's signature on there, just because of the initial on it. But there was also a film that was from a news station in Virginia, and the box was still sealed up. And he's like, "Did you see that film in there?" I said, "Yeah." So I got it. I had to actually drive it to Cincinnati because I bought a projector for it. It was I think it was a 35 millimeter film, but that projector was rough, and I was afraid it was going to tear that film up because the way he said it was sealed up and it was in the back of the desk when he got the Blue Book in '67. I was curious about what was on it. Well, after I had it, it's up on John's website. After I had it copied, it actually was Hector Quintanilla sitting somewhere. It looks like to me like a news studio or something, and talking about the Socorro case. It's only a minute long, but it's my belief I can't find it anywhere that was totally unseen until I got this box of files. He's not saying anything that he's never said before about the case, but still, it's a different setting. So that was one of my favorite things that were in there, and the lieutenant was excited about that, mainly because he didn't know what was on it. He'd never taken the time. I don't even think he found it till they were cleaning out the desk. There were 5 desks in there at one time from the different guys they had working, so he had a lot of stuff to clean out. That's why there's so many papers here.
And I have to ask you, because you talk about the interactions with Carl Sagan. And I talked to Stan, I've lectured with him, had him on the show. Not a lot of love there, but yeah. What is your feeling when you see the interactions with Carl Sagan?
Well, this one was kind of a boring one. I mean, he was just telling him that thanks for asking for a copy of a particular document. A paper he wrote, and I don't have it in front of me. I can't tell you which one it was, but then it looks like he also sent along the paper. He requested a copy from Sagan, so Sagan sent along a copy of. It's just an article of something he wrote, and I'm getting ready to send that stuff over to John, so it will be up on his site soon. So keep checking in the next couple weeks, but I'll have all those documents up on there.
And that is
a ton
cool.
of interactions between him and different people. And then another thing I have is came into is a lot of J. Allen Hynek's bills. That he sent, like a contract he signed with with Wright-Patterson and the Air Force. Then he would send itemized bills for different investigations, for making phone calls. He was very methodic in writing things down. He kept a timetable of everything. And ton of interactions between him and Quintanilla, J. Allen Hynek and Hector Quintanilla. Just kind of, they sometimes bickering about not getting cases done fast enough. Some of those things may or may not be in the Blue Book files. I haven't had time to cross-check everything.
Wow. But how interesting, even just to see those seemingly mundane interactions, they really speak volumes. And I love learning about the person, because that's important when you're looking at the whole body of work. And I just have to say that J. Allen Hynek actually did go to Heshdal in Norway, where I had the pleasure of going. And so, that was a really cool thing that was later in his life. But what a fascinating, all of this is just so fascinating. And please, if you're looking through, the files, if you find anything out about the Waldo Harris case, if there are any pieces, any information, that is a case I've lectured on in Barry Greenwood. Barry has all of these, just cassette after cassette, and I sent him a little kind of a recording device that could transfer audio to his computer, and he sent me all of the original interviews, the audio interviews with the Hill Air Force Base officers and all of the witnesses in the Waldo Harris case. And it was
I was reading about that before we got on this evening, and I looked it up in it does show up in my case list book, and I don't know what I'm assuming it's the one they classified as a Sundog, Does that sound familiar? It was from October 2nd. But I mean, how were guys on the ground seeing that?
Oh yeah, I mean, come on, no,
yeah,
an experienced
and it was at
pilot.
that time when
Yeah.
when they were taking probable cases or possible cases and making them probable. And they went back through the system and were doing that. Then they took the probable cases and made them, definite. So,
and that's the
there was a lot of
fascinating
things
thing.
done with the different captains and the different commanders that took over that program through time.
It's interesting, and I should have you back, and we should talk a little bit more about Waldo Harris, and I can play the audio clips, because you've got the two people that owned the airport, and you've got experienced pilots on the ground looking through binoculars at this. You've got the pilot in the sky. He radioed Hill Air Force Base. They scrambled jets. I mean, you've got all of these things, and yet they're trying to pass it off as a sundog or as a skyhook balloon or yada, yada, yada. I mean, it's so ridiculous, but it's a really incredible case. And I think there are many incredible cases in Blue Book, even if they're classifying them as known.
Well, I'll keep my eyes peeled as I'm going through this, and anything Utah, I'll make sure I send your way. Like I said, I don't have something from every Blue Book case. I wish I did. Sometimes I got two of things from some of them. But if anybody out there that's listening, or you ever come across anybody that has an interest in a particular case, they can feel free to reach out to me, and if I have something on it, I'll send it to them.
And that is
I'm working on getting
cool.
everything labeled so it's an easier search for that, by the way.
And I have to say, props to you, bravo. This is what we need in the field, are people that are willing to be open with what they have. And there are investigators who have been working on this for decades, and they have a lot of work that they should be sharing with younger people in the field, and they don't. And it's really, I mean, that to me is so selfish and detrimental to try to encourage younger people in the field and give them ideas.
And that's something we need, younger people. I wish I would have got serious in it when I was younger. I waited till I was 43, I think, before I actually started taking it serious. They need younger people.
For me, and that's the thing, every time we go to a conference, it's like, oh, okay. I mean, we're getting older. And when you look at the way we are engaging this, or even with, you look at MUFON's new website that they've raised a lot of money for and spent money on. I mean, I said this on the Paracast. I mean, it looks like an old man.
Yeah.
It looks like a 90-year-old man. I mean, the website that they've spent all this money on, and it's like, I used to, when I was working with Jan, just say, okay, we need to at some point in time realize that there's a different way to engage a younger demographic. And if we're not utilizing different social media forums and getting in touch with that and making videos and teaching people how to investigate and all of these things, of course, we're never going to get the younger generation. And this is one area where I say hats off to Tom DeLonge, because he understands how to engage a younger generation. And none of us in the field of ufology seem to be doing that. And that's not going to come in handy for this subject at all.
No, and if anything good comes out of that, hopefully at least that does, younger people, that and people will come out and talk about it. I mean, just like the military pilot, other people seeing him talk, maybe others will come out, and that kind of good will come of it.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just Don Quixote and like the eternal optimist, but I really think right now we're at such a pivotal time. And I think, while I know that amazing things are happening and we have this opportunity to engage a younger generation, we have all of this incredible work from people like Fran Ridge, Barry Greenwood, Michael Swords, all of these people that we can get, here you go, do something with this and figure out a way to get this information out to the public and come up with new ideas and ways to tackle this subject. And it really is an exciting time. Yep. So I love it. And I love that I've connected with you. I think this is going to be a really cool friendship.
Okay. Well, yeah, just get a hold of them anytime and I can come back on, or if you have a question about something. And hopefully, Fran, speaking of Fran, I finally got my Madar device from him up and running.
Oh, sweet.
Hopefully, we got 2 in Ohio now, and it sounds like he's got quite a few coming online. So.
Oh, and that is awesome. I'm looking at mine right now.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how to read mine yet, but I'm working on that. But it is hooked up. It's been up for about a week running, so.
Oh, and you know, Fran is, I think the world of him, and what a resource for everyone. And he's done so, I mean, since 1970,
I know.
he has been working on Madar. And for you, for me, for all of us that are looking at this, we can compare the data from Madar to sightings, and this is going to be a really good way to push things forward. And I know that Northern UFOs has Madar too, and he's one of my biggest supporters. Well, he is my biggest supporter. I just want to again say thanks. So tell people again where we can find you, where we can reach you.
You can reach me at the. I'm giving my email address here. Just a second. My Black Vault email address here. So rob.mercer@theblackvault.com. It's probably the best way to get a hold of me. And I've also got a phone through there, so it's 1-800-456-2228, extension 550. And, if I don't answer, leave a message, and I will get back with you as soon as I can. If you have any questions about this Blue Book stuff, may have something that interests you on a particular case, maybe something that was blacked out and you've always wanted to know or something, might have that information. No guarantees, but I can at least check.
Well, I might have to be picking your brain about some of the stuff in the Newhouse case, because I'm sitting here with it in my hand, and I've got, at least 100 pages, and I'm seeing a lot of redacted information. So, I might need that.
Okay.
So what are your plans this weekend? Are you and the family doing anything fun?
Well, I got a lot of work to do tomorrow. And Sunday, I've got a guy that's wanting to become an investigator with the Black Vaults coming over, and he's going to set in while I go do a little research on a couple cases that I have. And I'm going to do a little bit of more research on this one I was telling you about, the 3-page letter, to see if I can, it's hard to find anything out from the 20s, but see if I can find any information, anybody else that's seen something, and figure out a way to present it on the case file list on the Black Vault. So it's still cold here, so that's the extent of my plans. I'll try to stay in a little bit.
Well, that sounds nice. It's really cold here, but I'm in Salt Lake City, and we haven't had a lot of snow this year, but you guys have been hit pretty hard.
Yeah, we've had cold and snow. We hadn't had it for 3 or 4 years. We had, actually, my daughter, she's 19 now. She had never driven in snow in 3 years because we hadn't had any, but we've had quite a bit this year. So I had to actually teach her now instead of when she first started learning how to drive.
Wow! And Tina's like messaging me and saying it's 70s. It's 70 in Vegas this weekend, which I think is just kind of rude, Tina. I think maybe as my producer, you should keep your comments to yourself.
Yeah. I can't wait for those days.
Yeah, I dare to dream.
It's been bad. It's 50 here today, but and nice out. But tomorrow it's supposed to be cold and rainy again.
So 3 minutes. I know. I love it. I can't wait. So 3 minutes to show close, and I want to ask you, who is your all-time favorite researcher?
That I've spoke with, probably Kevin Randall. He says how it is. You kind of, he's very, very knowledgeable. I enjoy reading his books and everything that he does.
He's great.
But I've talked to quite a few of them. Just to these Blue Book files, I've spoke with Ray Stanford, spent hours talking to him. Fran Ridge, I've talked to him. Me and Dave Marler spent hours and hours, hung out with James Fox for a couple of days. I had Dave Marler and Grant Cameron over to my house last fall. And we spent about 4 hours going through these files. They all do pretty solid work.
They do. I'm a big fan of Grant Cameron, especially with regard to the Tom DeLonge stuff and James. Always, I've been trying. James keeps promising me he's going to come on the show, but he's kind of slacking. So I'm going to send him a message tonight and say, James, you're slacking. You better get on the show.
Stay on top of it. Yeah.
I know he's always all over the world and doing this and that stuff, but it's fun and it's been so awesome to have you here. I knew I would totally enjoy the show, and I want to just again thank you for actually having information, having such a great resource, and for taking the time to scan it, to share it, and get that information out there. And really thank God that this went to you, because it could have ended up in the trash somewhere. So it's kind of a divine thing.
Okay. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And I want to just tell all of my listeners, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you go to YouTube, check out videos, share it. Send me your questions. Go to ufoclassified.com. You can send me emails there. I want to give a big shout out to my producer, who I adore. Tina Marie is the best station manager and the best producer on the planet. Have a safe weekend and stick around for Tina Marie and Solaris Blue Raven. I will catch you all next week.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio